real incomes. Nothing about capital maintenance, which keeps the structure of production up and running. Nothing about saving at all, since most popular critics of capitalism appear to think consumption is what really contributes to economic health, as if simply using things up could make us rich. From this standpoint, socialism seems to make sense. There are no unintended consequences of government intervention worth thinking about. We have rich people over there and things we'd like to do with their money over here, so what's the problem? If there's an outcome we want, why, we simply legislate it into existence. Want higher wages? Just pass a law. If this were true, poverty could have been conquered anytime, anywhere. We ought to call the folks in Bangladesh and let them know poverty is over. You just need to pass some laws. Now, were we to impose the American regulatory apparatus and American labor laws and wage requirements on Bangladesh, virtually the entire country would become instantly unemployable and poverty would only intensify. It's almost as if there's something other than regulation and redistribution that accounts for economic progress. Among the great merits of Socialism Sucks are that it's short, engaging, and easily digested, which is precisely what the anti-socialist pro-freedom side needs right now. Your guides on the tour of the unfree world you are about to embark upon could scarcely be better chosen, I might add. Bob Lawson, who has done extensive research on the economic freedom of the various countries of the world, has important insight into what works and what doesn't. Ben Powell's book on sweatshops, published by Cambridge University Press, explains what needs to be done and what needs to be avoided for the developing world to prosper, as well as the various ways that ignorant, if sometimes well-intentioned, Westerners retard that process. Turn the page, and your journey begins. The good news? When it's all done, you can close the book and be back in semi-capitalist America. At least for now, that is. Tom Woods, tomspodcast.com. Introduction. Not Socialism. Sweden. September 2009. If I've got one major bitch about Sweden, I said as I sat across the table from Bob at the Duvel Cafe in Stockholm, it's the alcohol prices. The Duvel Cafe isn't a dive, but it's not a swanky high-end bar either. Behind its plain black street front exterior is a 5-seat bar with high-alcohol Belgian beers on tap, a few booths, and the uncomfortable wooden window seat that was causing a major pain in my ass. Yet, despite the relative geographic proximity to Belgium, our Belgian beers cost far more than what we were accustomed to paying in the U.S. "Fucking taxes," he answered. "Sweden has to pay for its welfare state." He was right. Sweden taxes alcohol at rates higher than most countries. In fact, Sweden taxes everything. A lot. Sweden is the first stop on our tour of socialist countries, even though it's not a socialist country. Wait, what? You heard Sweden was an example of how socialism works? Though lots of people believe Sweden is a socialist country, and some of our politicians try to use that misunderstanding to advance their own agendas, we're going to present evidence to the contrary. But first, let me give you a little background about Bob and me, so you'll know where we're coming from. Bob grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. His background is working class, and he's a lifelong fan of Cincinnati's subpar professional sports teams. While earning his Ph.D. at Florida State University in the early 1990s, Bob became involved in a project analyzing quantitative data that would finally settle a question that has long been a point of disagreement among social scientists: whether a more capitalist government or a more socialist government creates conditions that translate to a better quality of life for its citizens. The idea for Bob's Economic Freedom Index, published in the Fraser Institute's annual Economic Freedom of the World report, started with Milton Friedman, the Nobel Prize-winning economist, and Michael Walker, the executive director of the Fraser Institute in Vancouver. Since the mid-1990s, Bob has worked with Professor James Gwartney of Florida State to put out the Fraser Institute's annual Economic Freedom Index. We'll talk